If you're dodging rain showers like me here in the UK, then you want tools to do your autumn tasks that make the work easy and efficient so you can get the jobs done quickly. Join me as I reveal my must-have tools for autumn gardening. Autumn's a busy time of year for a gardener, and if your environment is anything like mine, then you're dodging rain showers, gales. There's only few gaps between all of that where you can get the work done. And so those gaps need to be as efficient as possible, and that means using the right tool for the right job. In today's video, we explore the autumn must-have tools to make your job easier. And you find me here in my tool shed. In fact, I have tools spread all over the garden in sheds where it's easy access for that bit of the garden. So the most handy tool is close to hand as and when I need it. So for me, there are only 4 real tasks to do in the autumn garden. There's cutting things, there's digging, there's composting, and there's weeding. So those 4 jobs require specific tools. And it's essential to have good tools for the task that you're doing. And believe me, it's only in the last few years that I've really realised this, after 30 years of gardening. So let's start with the job that requires the least tools, and that would be composting. And that's because all you need is a fork. And a fork is better than a spade because you're just moving stuff. So a fork will help pick up that stuff easier. You'll get more on that fork than you would a spade. The other thing, of course, because you're moving stuff, is to have something to carry the stuff in. So either a shrug, if you've got a small garden, or are just dealing with a small space, or a wheelbarrow. And that wheelbarrow will help move things around the garden, whether it's moving stuff to the compost bin or moving the compost from the compost bin and out to the garden. Either way, the wheelbarrow is your friend. Don't be tempted to think that a spade might be better, because you just simply wouldn't get that amount of material on a spade. Next, we'll move on to digging. Now in my garden, I try and follow a no-dig approach. So actually, I do very minimal digging. And really the only thing that I dig is to plant plants. So for me, planting seedlings, hand trowel is all that you would need. Perfectly good. Doubles as a scooper for compost or anything like that. So this is absolutely fine. It's all you need if you've just got a cutting patch that is planting out annuals. Really perfect. Don't need much more. However, my go-to for any planting work these days is my trusty hori-hori knife. I love it. I plant all my seedlings with it. If I'm digging, I use this serrated edge to cut through some tough roots. It's got if it was cleaner, it's got a measuring element in the blade that helps it make it easier to plant things at the right depth. This is in my trunk of essentials without a shadow of a doubt. This is one of the best tools I've bought. That's fine if you're just planting small things. So for a cutting patch in general, any one of those tools would be absolutely fine. However, if your garden is more substantial and you've got bigger shrubs, you want to move or split things, then other bigger tools come into the equation. So we're looking at things like the trusty fork that I use in composting. Again, because I don't dig much, I don't use it much in the garden. It generally lives by the compost heap. And that's fine, and I just move it as and when required. I have got a spade. I've got several spades actually. They rarely come out because I just don't use it that much. I find if I need to do something on a bigger scale, the fork is generally my preferred option because it goes through the soil quicker and easier. It breaks it up a bit better. So I rarely need a spade to do anything. So unless I'm wanting to dig a hole for some reason, then the spade is perfect. But other than that, it doesn't really come out. And when you're using tools of this size, don't be tricked into thinking that the biggest tool is best for the job. It's not. Get a tool that's the right size for you. So my husband has this fork, which is much more substantial than my preferred fork. It weighs a ton. It is slightly bigger, maybe a couple of inches, but it does make it more cumbersome for me to use. Whereas this one is much more easy for me to use. The weight's right, so I'm not feeling, it doesn't feel like a burden to use. So that would be my biggest tip, is if you're using big tools like this, get one that is the right size for you. And they come in all shapes and sizes now. Weeding is my job I love to hate. And you can get many tools for this. There is many tools for specific types of weeds, such as this grubber, I think it's called. And that's specifically for getting out deep-rooted tools, weeds like dandelion, something like that. And it does make the job easier. If you've got seedlings, weedlings growing in your garden, that is fairly well maintained otherwise, then a hoe is the perfect choice for you. I prefer hoes like this. There are like D-shaped ones, but this one works for me. It's got a blade both sides, so I just have to move it backwards and forwards, and it cuts through the weedlings both ways, so it makes it from one movement, then you're getting double the work done. So that I like, and it was my favourite weeding tool. However, this year for my birthday, I got this handheld weeding tool, and it is brilliant. It's a Japanese weeding tool. It's left-handed, and I'm left-handed, so it's perfect for me. It cuts through anything really. Because I'm at a lower level, I can see where I want to go, so I can go under the soil and get the weed roots better. I can dig out I can just run it along the surface in the same way as a hoe, and it will cut off the seedlings at the stems, and they should no longer grow. Or if you've got deep-rooted weeds, I have been known to use the pointy end to stick in and hoik it out. So I think this has got multiple uses. Whether I'm using it correctly in all instances, I don't know. But I find it particularly useful, and it's my go-to tool for weeding now. The drawback is that it's a short handle, so you do have to be on your knees to use it. And it does mean that you can get in between plants, whereas with a hoe it's more appropriate for doing rows, so it's kind of between rows rather than in between each plant. So this gets in all of the nooks and crannies, so it's brilliant. But because you're on your knees, a kneeling mat is helpful. Now I have had this year's. It probably cost about £2 or £3. It's seen better days by far, but it works. It does the job. I maybe one day treat myself to a thicker one or a better one, but it works fine for me now. And finally, if you want to be complete, pair of gardening gloves for digging or for weeding, just to stop your nails getting too dirty. But if you're a gardener, you've always got dirty nails, whether you wear gloves or not. I prefer these ones, which are nitrile gloves, I believe. So this covering here is much more flexible than the thicker gloves, and you can feel things better with it. They are supposed to be washable, but as you can see, I never wash them. But I find these really comfortable to wear. So if you want gloves, they're the type I would choose. For cutting, it's all a matter of size, or the size of the thing that you're cutting. So in general, in a cutting patch, you won't need much more than secateurs or pruning shears, I think they're called elsewhere in the world. These are bypass secateurs. These I have found the most useful. So you want a pair that is comfortable in your hand with a good grip. Again, for women, go for a smaller size. These ones I've now had for years. I've gone through many in my 30 years, but these ones are particularly good to hold for me. They're the right size for my hand. I think they are a Sophie Conran variety from Burgeon and Ball here in the UK, but they just fit me well. I often leave them in the garden, and they don't rust. So secateurs are a go-to. Obviously for cutting flower stems you want snips rather than secateurs. They're a bit more gentle on the flower stems. But for cutting stems of plants that are to prune or that you need to cut back, then they are my go-to. If you need to cut more than one stem or are happy to cut back a whole plant, then hedging shears, I think these are called, are perfect for the job. You can it cuts many stems all at once, as long as the stems aren't too thick. So they are perfect if you need to cut a lot in one go. However, I only need them at this time of year. Any other time, they don't come out of the tool shed at all. If you're wanting to cut a branch that's a bit bigger, then loppers are your friend. These can cut quite significant sized branches, and I'll always generally give it a go to see whether they work. So I've cut branches that are about that. Admittedly maybe struggling, but it still goes through them with a bit of elbow grease. Now, these are perfect if you have to cut at a distance, so there's got length, so if you need to stretch, these are good. However, if you've got a thicker stem and you don't need to stretch too far, then another option is a folding saw. So this, easy to carry around, got serrated edges that you can quickly saw through a branch and do the same job as loppers. I wouldn't necessarily want to be cutting something that is too thick with these because it takes a lot of effort, but nevertheless they are handy to have. And bigger stems, or if you find that the stem you want to cut is too big for this, then really you're looking at more substantial tools anyway. But I found something else this year that has helped make cutting back shrubs a little bit easier. And that is a chainsaw. So not the big chainsaws that I wouldn't trust myself with, to be perfectly honest. This is a light, handheld, electric chainsaw. I bought it off Amazon. They're fairly cheap for what they do, and they do a good job. They cut through branches that are more challenging to loppers or the folding saw really quite easily. The only drawback is that as I'm left-handed, it's a little bit awkward to press the safety button and the trigger at the same time. It takes a little bit of manipulation to do that, which is a little bit unfortunate. However, if I was right-handed, no problem whatsoever. And it really does make light work of big branches. I wish I had this sooner rather than leaving it till this late in my gardening journey. But they are brilliant for most gardening jobs. But again, all these tools are only relevant to the type of garden that you have. So if I was to choose 3 tools that I couldn't do without for this autumn gardening season, or any season come to that, I would have secateurs, a hurry knife and my weeding tool. They are my go-to, and then any of the other tools that I've gone through are for more specialist jobs really. So if you don't have those jobs in your garden, you don't need them. But any gardener would find these really useful. So then, that's my choice of tools. What's yours? Comment below what tools you find the essential for your autumn gardening tasks. And if you've stayed around this long, give me a thumbs up, subscribe and all of that biz. And I'll see you in the next one. Until next time, happy gardening!